Hi, my name is Ng Wai Kong. I would like to have a presentation on the business research methodology assessment tool for my MBA program.
Before I introduce my topic of research, I've been searching online for articles of interest. ESG popped out on multiple articles and it attracts my attention. Upon detailed understanding, ESG is a short form for environmental, social, and governance. The definition of environmental is how does it impact the environment and what sort of risk management does it practice. For social, it is the organizational relationship with the stakeholders. And for governance is how an organization is led and managed. So the ESG is a set of metrics used to measure an organizational performance, and it is increasingly important in investment, and it is in decision-making tools for the investors. So in this context, the institutional investors is a large organization and is a government pension fund. So I'm in the construction industry, and then I'm feeling like there's a certain relate towards ESG initiatives at the moment. So I did a deeply research. So construction contributes to the highest GDP in Malaysia at 20.7% among all of the other services. Hence, I also can find out that Malaysia have ESG initiatives such as the Green Building Index and the Low Carbon Cities Framework, which is a set of metrics to measure a greenery efficiencies towards a project and construction. It is often relates that the government might be taking the ESG initiatives to attract investors as the main drive for construction often require investors. In this context, the institutional investors in Malaysia is EPF. So I would like to go into locally first instead of international in this research proposal. So it will be the role of institutional investors and how it drive the construction in Malaysia to be more sustainable, which is my research topic. As mentioned, I have read through certain articles to find out their findings towards ESG and the construction. One of the findings found out that it was found that institutional investors perceive that the environmental and corporate governance are much more important than social factors in their investment decision. Another article says that the politicians and regulatory have begun to incorporate sustainability factors and ESG frameworks resulting in both new and amended regulatory requirements. What are my thoughts? Construction are correlated to environmental when it comes to ESG principles, and government are aware on the importance of ESG as it is crucial for the economy of the countries. As the problems arise, I discovered that the assessing studies are going on a more macro environmental instead to a more micro, as it did not specifically address how sustainable construction can incentivize the Malaysian government to adopt ESG initiatives. So I did another few articles, and some of the findings are more towards to a Malaysia basis. Like Liao says that one of the main criticism is that sustainable construction materials, especially those considered eco-friendly, may have a higher initial cost than traditional building materials. Another article says that construction, which is environmental more related actions, may take longer time to produce results for firms. So the problem is the assessing studies did not identify variety of barriers that Malaysia face when promoting ESG, as sustainable construction material may be just one of the factors, and it will take longer to discover the environmental benefits as construction requires a long time to complete. As another articles that I read is, another limitation is that the project managers are against emphasizing the construction companies' ESG related activities and their responsibility for societies. And the problem arises, the assessing studies did not identify how investors can shape government ESG policies. So this is the conclusion of my problem statement.
So in this slide, it shows a summary of literature that have been reviewed in categories of key terms and concept, underlying theories, arguments presented, finding and gaps. So for the first 5 articles, it focused more on ESG towards a company benefit and construction projects. And the underlying theories are quite common, which can be found is the sustainable theory and the stakeholder theory. The arguments presented is most of the company in common uses ESG to prioritize profit and what are the barriers faced in construction industry specifically. The finding and gaps shows that there is limited studies of construction and for Malaysia's market towards ESG initiatives. The final article shows further concrete and reasoning on stakeholder theories, which are common in some of the articles right here. To summarize, the 6 studies focus on how ESG performance impacted the firm value, profitability, and investment decision, and there is barriers including high costs and lack of standardized ESG frameworks in Malaysia. The finding is the institutional investor prioritize ESG on a corporate level but not on the project level, and there's lack of ESG evaluation framework to Malaysia's construction industry. The common theories that can be found is stakeholder theory and sustainable theory, which is going to use in my research proposal. So to align to my research proposal, here are the research objective and questions which going to be obtained during my research studies. Question 1. How do institutional investors influence Malaysia's shift towards sustainable practices? The objective that I can gain from this question is to assess their role in promoting sustainable construction practices in Malaysia. And the second objective is to identify key barriers preventing the large-scale adoption of green building initiatives in the construction sector. For the second question, what are the challenges and obstacles to institutional investors and the Malaysian government face in promoting ESG compliant projects? The objective that can gain is to evaluate existing investment strategies and to obtain recommendations for advancing sustainability-focused construction. In these slides, it will elaborate more on the common theory that's found in the literature review. First is the stakeholder theory. The definitions is the concept in business ethics and organizational management argues that companies should consider the interests of all stakeholders and not just the shareholders to achieve long-term success and sustainability. The framework is the value derived extends beyond economics and profits, relying heavily on environmental, social, and ethical compliance. Malaysia can benchmark their construction sector by highlighting the importance of adopting ESG compliant building. The second theory is the sustainable theory. It emphasized meeting present needs without compromising future generations' ability to meet their own, focusing on environmental, social, and economic aspects. The framework provides an understanding on how institutional investors integrate ESG considerations into their decision-making processes, and it examines the long-term benefits of ESG investment in the construction sector and the role of investors in influencing sustainable development in Malaysia. In this slide, we will elaborate more on the conceptual framework for my research proposal. There are 4 variables in this framework. The first one is the independent variable backed by stakeholder theory and influence, which is the institutional investors in Malaysia. They are the financial resources provided by institutional investors, and in this context, Malaysia's pension fund. Then we have the dependent variable, which is the outcome impact, which is the sustainable construction adoption in Malaysia. This could be measured by number of projects with GBI or LCCF adoption. The mediating variable backed by sustainable theory will be one of the impacting towards the outcome of the dependence variable, which is the financial incentives, the investors' confidence, and ESG reporting standardization. The moderating variable will be the external influence, which will impact the outcome, which is more focused on the market demands for green buildings and project-specific for green buildings challenges. By doing this research proposal, there will be four goals that can be achieved. The first one, which is the expanding sustainability theory. It demonstrates how institutional investors can serve as active agents in promoting sustainable construction, and it links long-term investment goals with short-term construction sector practices. Second, it can refine stakeholders theory. It redefines the investors-developer relationship as a collaborative ESG ecosystem, not just financial transaction. It highlights investors' influence as a form of stakeholder pressure driving ESG compliance in Malaysia. Third, which is a new conceptual framework. It introduced a multi-variable ESG investment influence model incorporating policy, finance, and investor behavior. It offers a foundation for future quantitative models and decision-making tools in sustainable investment analysis. Final, bridging research gap. It fills in the gaps in project-level ESG investment research in construction, and it strengthens the literature on institutional ESG leadership in infrastructure development. Here are here are the reference used for this presentation. That concludes my presentation for my research proposal. Thank you.